Wrong Organ might have gained a lot of popularity recently for their newest release, Mouthwashing, but it was not the first of their games to dive into the scene with unique low-poly graphics and some very poetic social commentary. Released in 2022, How Fish Is Made is a short game that puts the player in the scales of a fish traveling through unsettling environments, being presented with a simple choice: up or down. Today on the Panopticon Theatre, we're going to break down How Fish Is Made and look into the symbolism and interpretations of this surreal experience. Here's where I'd normally cut into the intro. However, I'm coming back from writing the end of this video to add a little to this before we start. This game is 10 minutes long, if that, and I thought when I started writing this video that it would be a quick little addition to the mouthwashing video I did previously. However, once I sat down and started to work through my thoughts and interpretations, I realized I could easily write an analysis the size of a Tolstoy novel about this game. So this video is long in comparison to the game itself, and I do get a bit florid in my analysis, but trust me, stick with me. This game is incredible, and today on the Panopticon Theatre, we're going to be diving into fatalism, free will, consumerism, how we make choices, and if our choices matter at all. And of course, how fish is made. I'd recommend playing the game yourself first. It's super short, maybe 10 minutes, and I won't be going over every single dialogue option here, just the ones I deem relevant. So if you want the full experience, you should pick it up yourself. It's completely free on Steam at the time of this video. The game begins with us, a sardine, falling through a tube, before we're unceremoniously dropped into an industrial-looking room. There's another fish in here who we can speak to, who tells us that by the end, we'll have to make a choice. Up or down. Everyone will have to make the choice eventually. He asked us to choose, and no matter what, simply asked us if we're sure. We have no context in this moment what up and down might even mean here, or what consequences our choice will have. The fish also comments that the machine can't talk to us, so we shouldn't talk to it. Plopping our way through metal corridors, we begin to meet other fish with their own strong opinions on which choice is right. The first we meet is a bouncy one who's convinced up is the right option. He's stuck with his conviction and wants us to agree with that decision. If we say we're heading down, he wonders if it'll hurt or if it'll stop. Across the room from him is a bigger fish stuck in plastic rings. He insists down is the correct choice, and he must know because he's a genius, despite the fact that not only has he got himself stuck in plastic, he also regularly uses big words incorrectly, like saying phantom instead of fathom. He also refuses to acknowledge his throne, the plastic rings, is uncomfortable. In the next room, we meet a quivering fish who's unsure of what choice to make. His family went up, but his friends said go down. His family's big, but distant in their togetherness, but the big group is safest. He's known his friend forever, but he's not sure if he can trust him when his family chose otherwise. He's paralyzed by choice and not knowing the outcome, and asked you to pick for him. If you tell him down, he'll note that his friend will be angry he hesitated, but it always gives him a way to earn his forgiveness. Apparently, his buddy told him he could never make decisions for himself. Sounds like a very healthy relationship. However, if we tell him to go up, he calls his friend stupid and says family is always right. However, he also asks if you're going the same way. If you say yes, he relaxes and disappears, presumably to make his choice. But if you say no, he gets anxious all over again. Going on ahead, the surroundings get a bit more meaty. We meet another fish. This one is looking at a particular rubber item, and this fish is stunned by the glory of this object, proclaiming it must mean something, but what? He believes we're in some creature's stomach, and that there must be a way out, and maybe this thing will communicate that to him somehow. There appears to be another likely dead fish under the object, so clearly this fish is not the first one to obsess over it. This fish also implies it's going to get inside there and be anointed. Next, we encounter a fish trapped in the gears of a door. He thought he'd found the gills of the creature that swallowed us, but instead got trapped, and begs us not to press the red button. Unfortunately, we need to do this to advance, and it doesn't end well for him. The environments get more fleshy and unsettling as we go on again. After this, we pass through an area where we can hear two voices. One higher talking about how fish are picked and packaged, and a deeper one that says things like, I don't think you gave me the best chance, and don't worry, I blame myself. The next fish we talk to is not actually the fish itself, but the parasite that's replaced its tongue. This parasite is likely Samothoa exigua, aka the tongue-eating louse. He claims that he and his friend the fish go way back, after he ate his tongue and they became co-workers. The louse is passionate about friendship, claiming his fish friend always says teamwork is the soul of success. Of course, we can't ever hear that from the fish. We're then treated to a musical number from the louse, with odd lyrics and kind of disgusting real-life visuals featuring lots of meat and other parasites, like Leucloridium paradoxum and tapeworms. We'll break this song down later. Heading on, we pass a pile of dead fish, then into this very tryptophobia-inducing hallway where we hear these words. Why do you deserve it? Will you be able to live with it? Try and try and try and try and try again. Those double-action hinges have always been there just for you, right? You'll come back, everyone does. Weak. Or you'll go looking. One way or another, right? Weak. Again, we'll break this down shortly. Finally, we approach the moment of choice. An ominous fish tells us it's time to choose, and we do so. Then, he tells us this. Do you understand yet? This privilege of choice that has been given to a worthless critter like you. That is the gift, not the outcome. Did the uncertainty scare you? Or does it scare you more to know there's no choice for you at all? Then all of this would have been for nothing. But wouldn't it feel better? Don't flatter yourself. I'll tell you a secret. You've already made your choice. This is not about making a decision. This is a test of conviction. Have you strayed from your path? Have you been honest and true to your truth, even to others? Did you believe me just now? I'm just a fish in an imposing room. Good enough, right? We'll circle back to this shortly as well. Sorry for so much bits we'll circle back to, by the way. There's just so much to analyze here that I really want to make sure I get into it properly in the analysis itself. We meet one final fish in the corridor, who's been counting how many fish go each way, and tells us he'll let us know what he sees ahead, but once he goes, we hear nothing. Finally, we get the actual choice. No matter which we choose, we get this text. You know, I always hated hearing, don't worry, a lot of people are going through the same thing. You're not alone. There's this selfish barbed wire inside my chest that coils up at that. No, my pain is more tragic, grander, deeper, if only you knew. That's not true, of course. I hate talking about it, because I hate people who talk about it. And that's not very nice. That's not okay. That's not how you can be about all this. It's not romantic, but at least it's true. Don't worry. A lot of people are going through the same thing. And that's what makes it the best USP yet. Thanks for playing. If you chose down, you get an ending where you go straight from the processing plant to someone's plate as a home-cooked meal. If you chose up, you're merged into an amalgamation of mass, brains all thinking as one, never able to come to a consensus and therefore never able to have direction. Let's get into the analysis. How fish is made could be said to be about many things. The primary point, of course, is choice, or the illusion of it, but there's also the element of conviction in that choice. But what is that choice? We're dumped into a room with no context and told that eventually we're going to choose, up or down. But though we're told so many times about what others think the right choice is, we never have any context to what that choice is or means, or what the consequences of it could be. Because nobody knows. It's clear all the information is hearsay or just blind belief in a particular option. As the first fish said, the machine, or rather the system that put us here, can't talk to us. All the fish can do is interpret the things they assume to be symbols, or blindly follow others, or just randomly make up their own minds. Before we get into the speaking fish, I want to talk a little about the fish you play as. I think it's an interesting choice to make it a sardine. Sardines are small and there's a lot of them. To me, this reflects how the fish is an insignificant part of a larger whole, or perhaps to display an individual's smallness against a larger confusing world. And just as a single sardine in a school is indistinguishable, so too are your choices part of a greater system. They're also fairly common and unremarkable, a fairly everyman fish, if you will. About as close as you could get to a default protagonist as a fish. The association with the idiom packed like sardines, and the fact that they commonly move in large schools, also ties in with the ideas we'll see more of later, such as social pressure and conformity, and the influence of others. Onto the fish we meet. Each fish we see presents a different perspective or manner of choosing. The first two both have extreme conviction that they are right, for different reasons. The up fish believes up is the correct choice based on his feeling that it's right, and he's always stuck with that choice. He never asked, never changed, never lied. He's uninformed and hasn't even thought to look at the other option, and whilst he briefly wonders what will happen to you if you pick down, he quickly dismisses his own questions. The down fish, on the other hand, believes in his own intellect to prove to both himself and others that he's correct, despite the fact that he's clearly not as intelligent as he thinks he is. Regardless of what others say, he's smart, so he must be correct. Both insist others must be wrong, but don't really give us an actual reason why, because like everyone else, they don't really know. They just use force of personality to convince themselves and others to the point that they can't believe anything else. And this is a way that real people sway those with weak wills to their side. That's exactly how cults are formed, around those with strong charisma, who pull the weak-willed to them despite having nothing beyond their own strength of personality backing them. When you look past that, the things they believe or want other people to believe are thinner than rice paper. I also think the indication to the downfish's so-called throne being uncomfortable is potentially a comment on how those in positions of false authority may have a lack of self-awareness about the emptiness of their status, or that they're clinging to positions or beliefs that are flawed or harmful to them due to their pride and unwillingness to appear vulnerable to others. The third fish is the opposite of the previous two. This one represents the inability to choose, someone who relies on outside input to make decisions for them. He wavers, giving the appearance of making his own decision, but in truth depends entirely on the player to break his mental tie. And the cause of his inability to choose is something familiar to real life. He's torn between his family and his friends' choices. Family is often a source of tradition and safety and familiarity, while friends can be individuality, change, the new that may go against that tradition. The fear of disappointing one side, or the fear of making the wrong choice entirely, when faced with a decision, can leave us paralyzed. In this fish's indecision, we can see our own moments where the desire for external validation or the avoidance of conflict overrides our ability to trust our own instincts. In seeking to please others, we lose the clarity to decide for ourselves. And this is also a reflection on the player too. Which do you trust most, your family or your friends? And well, that's where your own decision, or at least what you'll tell the fish to do. In deciding for the fish, you're not just influencing its fate, you're revealing a part of yourself. Of course, this also reflects a larger image of people who are followers of the crowd, who base their entire likes and dislikes, hobbies and personality off of what others decide are the correct ones. This is something most people do to an extent, but at its worst, this can erode your own sense of self and identity, leaving you at the same point as this fish, paralyzed by choice until someone else comes along to direct him. The fourth fish is another element of choice, those that find symbols anywhere to help them decide, no matter how abstract and disconnected they may be. This is best connected in a real-life parallel to religion and spirituality, though it's not just a reflection of these things. People find worship and meaning in anything at all, indeed in gods or other religious worship systems, but also in routine, in a cause to fight for, in economic systems, or in anything they feel is the meaning to life or offers them a greater purpose. But religion is the best analogy here, in that it's basing your choices on something that is truly abstract, a concept, shared or otherwise, whose basis in reality is entirely based in personal interpretation. And with enough belief, any sign, regardless of source, could be interpreted as a message or something that holds hidden meaning. The specific choice of object here is also fairly significant. On the surface it seems silly and absurd, but to read into it a little, what is the purpose of it? To protect, to prevent a natural process, and you could even argue to control an element of one's future. It's not too deep to read into it as an idea of the fish attempting to protect itself from the natural process of having to make a choice, something all will make eventually. By stopping his advance and worshipping here, the fish is preventing the advancement of his own future, at least for a while. The desire for control over our path is such an incredibly human one, and the dead fish inside is also a part of this, implying that this rejection and stalling of the path forward is a death sentence, whether literally or in the more abstract sense, that denying your own free will is a death in itself. The mundanity and ridiculousness of this object also connects to how humanity will seek answers in the most unlikely of places when confronted with uncertainty. In times of crisis, even the ridiculous can take on significance if we need it to. Finding meaning in symbols is a way to make sense of the chaos around us. These symbols give us a structure for decision-making and a sense of purpose even if the foundation is arbitrary. Really, this is also the same situation as the previous fish. Whereas the third fish looked to other people to advise his decisions, this one looks to what they perceive as a higher power. But they're both connected to the idea of deferring decision to outside forces. The fifth fish, stuck in the gears, has a twofold meaning, despite the short interaction. The player is faced with deliberate, intentional action. You must kill the fish to progress. Unlike earlier moments of decision where the choice is abstracted, this presents you with a tangible consequence. Someone else's life becomes collateral for your advancement. Progress, survival, or even self-determination can come at the cost and harm of others. The gears themselves can symbolize the mechanisms of systems, societal, industrial, that grind forward relentlessly, indifferent to those caught within them. The fish trapped in the gears represents those who are powerless or sacrificed in the process of another's journey. And indeed, as the first fish said, we can't talk to the machine. There's no way for us to stop the mechanism or free the fish. Either we stay behind and exactly as we are, or we kill them to advance. But even staying is a choice, which hurts the fish either way. Even if you remain where you are, it's still stuck there, trapped and in pain. And in doing so, you'd sacrifice your own ability to make the choice in the future. By forcing you to kill the fish, the game confronts your agency. Are you truly making decisions here, or are you simply playing out the role the game, or life, demands of you? Despite our best efforts to seek meaning or morality, moving forward often requires sacrifices, sometimes ones we'd rather not acknowledge. But it's important to also note the reason the fish got trapped. It thought it saw the gills of the creature you're allegedly within, and attempted to escape through them. In trying to avoid the decision that the game and by extension life demands of it, the fish ended up in an even worse situation. This suggests how the refusal to choose, or the refusal to confront hard decisions, often leads to worse outcomes, much as we saw with the previous fish and his desire to meet the same fate as the dead one. The gears move ahead, regardless of your hesitation or avoidance. Trying to dodge the inevitable can be just as destructive as making a wrong choice, and this moment presents the idea that inaction in itself is a kind of choice with its own consequences. Now onto the next fish, or rather the louse. First of all, the overall symbolism is fairly obvious, connecting to the ideas of agency and loss of self we seen previously. A louse represents an external force that co-opts the fish's voice and, by extension, its ability to make choices or express itself. Whether it's societal pressure, propaganda, ideology, or interpersonal relationships, there are forces in life that can take over our autonomy and make decisions, or speak, on our behalf. The fish's tongue being replaced is significant because language and communication are fundamental to asserting one's identity and agency. Without its own voice, the fish becomes a hollowed-out version of itself, its existence dictated by something parasitic. This moment also connects to the overall existential themes of the game, particularly the question of who or what is truly making our decisions. Are our choices really our own, or are they shaped by external forces we may not even be fully aware of? The parasite speaking for the fish could symbolize eternalized beliefs, societal expectations, or even self-doubt that rob people of their ability to act with true agency, tying into all the other fish we've seen previously and the forces that dictate their decisions. Also, the louse being a parasite, plus the many parasites we see in the song sequence, reflect the game's exploration of systems and inevitability. Parasites thrive by exploiting their hosts, just as industrial, social, or existential systems can exploit individuals and reduce them to instruments or means to an end. The fish and the louse are a symbol of powerlessness, a being that has lost control, forced to continue living as a shell while someone or something else decides what it says, does, or becomes. The louse's song is chaotic lyrically and structurally fragmented, dark humour with a tone of bitterness and resignation underneath. It mainly seems to present an idea of inevitability and the absurdity of life, and how we all just have to live with our choices, plus what I can only read as parasite propaganda. I think the line about fixing his expectations suggests the futility of trying to control outcomes in an uncontrollable world. Do right, follow that plan written on the side of the can feels like a direct jab at blind obedience to systems or instructions. Plan could symbolize societal expectations or routines we follow because they're prescribed, even if they lack meaning. It's obvious until it isn't. The rules and norms we adhere to seem natural until we stop and question them, at which point their farcicality becomes clear. The suggestion of being on a stage and delivering a performance suggests our choices being performative, tying into how we might tell the other fish of the game our choices differently based on their personalities. Another tie to the game's themes of identity and authenticity. Are we truly acting of our own will? Or are we just playing a part in a script? And the repeated lines of just killing time living with it, and you'll be buried with it, connect to the overall theme of choices, and how no matter what choices we make, we'll be living with them until our graves. It's a nihilistic, almost fatalistic little tune that is somehow both mockery and a lament for the human condition. Moving on, the pile of dead fish could potentially symbolize the unavoidable outcome, reminding that no matter what choices we make, up, down, or somehow avoided, we'll all end up in the same place, dead. Do our choices really matter? Endpoint for all of us? Next, these big things with eyes in them appear to be lotus seed heads. Lotuses are a common symbol across several cultures, representing things such as spiritual purity and divinity, particularly in Buddhism. It rises above the mud, symbolizing rising above filth and evil to achieve nirvana, whilst as it blooms, it plants a seed for another to grow. But here, invoked with the seed heads instead of the flowers, it's subverted by the frankly unsettling appearance of the seed heads. Without the flower, there's only the seed, continuing to grow and propagate without ever reaching what one might call enlightenment. And much like the worshipping fish earlier, we're once again presented with something connected to the divine that is presented as a grotesque and mundane object. The eyes embedded in the holes give a sense of being judged or scrutinized. Are we truly free to make decisions when we feel constantly observed by others? Also, the fact that they're seed pods opens up the symbolism of seeds in general, which here we could connect to the idea of choice. Choices, like seeds, are planted early but bloom later, often beyond our control. The words we hear here are pretty cryptic, but tie back into the idea of choice. Why do you deserve it? Do you deserve something better? Salvation at the end of this journey? Or even just the privilege to make a choice? Will whatever choice you make be justified? Are you special in any way, that you're allowed to make this choice? Will you be able to live with it? This echoes the louse's words, with the lyric, just killing time living with it. Can you live with whatever choices you make? No matter what you choose, you'll have to live with the consequences. And maybe the difficulty of choice isn't in the choosing itself, but in the regret, guilt, or uncertainty that comes after. Now the next couple sentences I think are directed at the player rather than our metaphorical fish. Try and try and try and try and try again. Those double action hinges have always been there just for you, right? You'll come back, everyone does, weak. Or you'll go looking one way or another, right? To me, this reads as a critique of how the player is likely to play this game. I think this is saying it knows no matter what choice the player makes at the end, they're going to go back and play the game again to get the other ending, learn the meaning of the other choices, or go looking for someone else's playthrough or explanation of the game to learn what happens, which the game calls out as weak. That's against the whole point of the game, the whole meaning of not knowing what the choice is or means. Of course, as somebody analysing the game right now, this does make me feel a little bad for kind of going against the spirit of things, but oh well, right? It's also human nature to want explanations for things. Now, the fish outside the final choice area. His dialogue appears philosophical and profound on the surface, but if you remember to view it within the fact that he's just like the other fish, no more important or knowledgeable, it becomes a deconstruction of false authority and the illusion of profound meaning, more directly so than with the first down fish in the plastic rings, but with a similar meaning. The fish's framing of the choice as the gift, not the outcome, is an attempt to inject the act of decision-making itself with significance. However, given that this fish is no wiser than any of the others, it seems in reality to be an attempt to find meaning in a meaningless system. Did the uncertainty scare you? Or does it scare you more to know there's no choice for you at all? Coming from this fish after we understand its role, these words lose any philosophical authority. He doesn't know the truth about the system any more than the player does. His questions are not enlightened. They cast back his own confusion and fear. Don't flatter yourself, I'll tell you a secret. You've already made your choice. Much like the louse's fatalistic views, this implies everything was meaningless and we were just going through the motions to reach an inevitable conclusion. It's not a revelation of some grand truth, but rather a projection of the fish's own cynicism and defeat. He too has likely reached this conclusion about himself. This is not about making a decision, this is a test of conviction. This line stands out in particular with the red text, which rarely shows up. Have we been steadfast and told all the fish the same choice throughout, or have we wavered, telling them what we think they want to hear? It frames choice as performative rather than consequential. What matters is not what you pick, but how true you are to yourself, similar to the louse's song mentioning the stage and the idea of performance. Again, this can be read as the fish desperately trying to find meaning in meaninglessness. If outcomes don't matter, then conviction becomes a substitute for significance. But it feels hollow. Coming from someone equally trapped, it sounds more like a coping mechanism than wisdom. The final admission deliberately breaks any illusion of authority or profundity. By acknowledging he's just a fish in an imposing room, he undermines everything he said, admitting he has no real answers, no deeper insight. The slang comments on how easily we're swayed by appearances and the illusion of authority. The fish's dialogue sounds important because it's delivered in a dramatic space with a confident tone, which is supported by our expectations and experiences with other games. There's usually someone near the end in a fancy room to tell us all the answers about what's been going on and what it all meant. But in reality, it's just another fish grasping for meaning. And the final fish. He seems the most down-to-earth and casual. Interestingly, when he tells you how many have made each choice, the colours commonly used for these elements are swapped. Previously, up has always been red and down always blue, with red text occasionally otherwise peppered around. It initially feels like it's supposed to give specific weight to words in a particular colour, but here at the end, the swapping shows it was meaningless and just another random element that might influence your choice. We also have another element adding to the choices here. One option has a significantly higher number of choosers than the other. Once again, like the second fish, do you follow the crowd or strike out with the fewer? And it's probable that if this fish has been here the whole time, he's been able to tell them all this, which also probably influenced many of the fish going ahead, which is probably the reason one option is so much higher. We decide which way he goes, but in the end he can't tell us much. Whichever choice he enters, he just says it's soft. To me, this fish symbolizes an older person in your life, a relative or friend. They're friendly, close, and offer you the information they know before they die. The casual way he speaks might reflect how he's given up on the semblance of looking for meaning. He's reached a point where he's calm and ready to go forward. In the end though, they can't tell you anything helpful from beyond the veil. It's soft, to me, reflects the way people have often described their relatives' reactions as they peacefully pass away. People report the dying say they feel warm and comfortable as they pass away. Now, we get to make the choice ourselves. First of all, let's look at the text we see regardless of which way we go. Honestly, I think this is very straightforward. It feels like a very personal commentary on both the universality of struggle and the selfish desire for pain to be individual and important within that. There's a deeply human and indeed selfish impulse to believe our struggles are special, that they have a tragic grandeur others couldn't possibly understand. But in reality, pain is, much like choice, universal and ordinary. Attempting to assign special meaning to suffering is often more about ego than truth, but the speaker acknowledges this is hypocritical of them to feel, and an unproductive way to live. Nonetheless, it's an honest admission of how they and many others feel. And that last little line, and that's what makes it the best USP yet, to me sort of comments on the commodification of pain and struggle, how shared misery becomes a selling feature, something to market, package and consume, and reflects how media, art and society exploit suffering for relatability or emotional weight. It's a critique of how people seek connection through universal struggles while simultaneously trying to set their pain apart as special. Now the end part. The sandwich is of course one end for processed fish, in which it's sold as food product, and the amalgamation thing is the other end, discarded as waste. The sandwich to me is an individualistic sort of ending, where the fish is part of a small selection that for a moment provides value in the form of food to someone. They're briefly important, but even then as part of a greater whole, and only for the moment that someone eats them. There's a theme there that we can connect to the idea of everyone in the end being reduced to a product or function. As for the amalgamation, opposingly it's all about being part of the shared whole, losing one's individuality for a shared quote-unquote greater purpose. It greatly evokes to me the scenes of humanity being turned into LCL from End of Evangelion, which we know from mouthwashing the devs are fans of. You gain some form of eternal existence at the cost of individuality and personal identity and agency. I think these both could also be interpreted as a part of choice. One, the sandwich, is accepting finality and simplicity at the end of something. Another is a rejection of finality, a choice to be more at the cost of yourself, reduction to a consumable product, instead embracing the complexity of continued existence, no matter how horrifying. You could call it the fear of being forgotten over eternal, meaningless existence. Connection and continuation, over individual self and ending, death and acceptance, life and grotesque endurance. But really, it's not a choice, since you never knew what you were choosing. It was entirely arbitrary. Whether you become a fish sandwich or join the meat amalgamation, the outcomes are equally absurd and dehumanizing. No matter how much you agonized over the choice, how much conviction you had, who or where you got your advice from, in the end it was futile. Nothing prior to the moment of choosing ever gave you any actual real indication of what came after. You were given the gift of choice, but did it matter when your choice was meaningless? The overall tone seems to somehow fluctuate between fatalism and free will, and you could argue it's about either of those ideas. But more so than that, I think the game overall is simply about the idea of choice, and how we overcomplicate that in a kaleidoscope of personal ways based on who we are, our culture, the people around us, the environment we're in, and an infinite combination of other factors. And it's also about meaning, and where we look for it, and how some of us might need meaning to move forward in life, where others are able to just make their choices without it. It's a reflection of religion, politics, interpersonal relationships, sure, but I feel there's a secondary to this game simply being about choice as a concept. Every moment of every day, we make choices. You made a choice to get out of bed at a specific time, or what to have for breakfast, when exactly to blink, and you make grander choices, go to university, take that job, go into that relationship, cut off that person, get that surgery, and every moment of your life up till that choice affects the way you choose. But you'll never know what that choice leads to. You'll never know if it was the right one, or if there even was a right one. But you have to make a choice anyway. Everyone does in the end. And you'll be buried with it, so for now, you just have to keep living with it. And every other choice you've made. For such a short game, the symbolism is truly packed into it like, well, sardines. Going past the initial absurdity and unsettling vibes, it's an incredibly thought-provoking game with a really interesting perspective on choice and a human struggle. And I don't think the absurdity is just for shock value. It's also a reminder of the absurdity of our own lives and the choices we make within it. If you think there's something else in this game I missed or didn't talk about, please let me know, and let me know what you thought. As always, I'd love to hear your takes on the game too, so let me know in the comments if you interpreted stuff differently. In the comments of my mouthwashing video, I said I'd cover the DLC in this video too, thinking it would be a fairly short one, but it turns out I had a whole lot to say on this game. And I don't think it would be fair to how fish is made either to derail my discussion on it by talking about mouthwashing too, so I'm planning another separate video where I go over the mouthwashing DLC, but I'm excited to dig into it too. Thanks for watching today's Panopticon Theatre performance. What do you think? Did I miss anything? What do you want me to talk about next? Make sure to sub and join the audience if you want to see more.